The money arrived while Walter Boone was sanding a walnut table nobody online knew he had designed. At 8:17 on a Tuesday morning, his phone buzzed against an old drafting cabinet. Walter ignored it. The shop was quiet except for sandpaper moving with the grain and a ceiling fan pushing warm Charleston air. Sawdust floated through the sunlight before settling on his sleeves. He wore the same brown canvas apron he had owned for 23 years. One strap was repaired with copper rivets. The front pocket held a carpenter's pencil and the brass caliper that had belonged to his mentor, Leon Freeman. Priya had offered to replace the apron twice because the brand needs cleaner visuals. Walter had told her the apron was not a visual. The phone buzzed again. He wiped his fingers on the canvas and opened the banking alert. Deposit received, $927,400. Walter read the number 3 times. The payment came from an Ohio company that had acquired a manufacturer he once worked with. Nearly 20 years earlier, Walter had designed a self-centering guide assembly that kept industrial cutting heads from drifting under heavy vibration. The patent had expired, but an audit uncovered unpaid royalties from the final years of the licensing agreement, plus penalties and a settlement. An attorney had warned him there might be money. Walter had expected enough to replace the shop roof. Not almost $1 million. He sat beside the unfinished table, broad scarred hands resting on his knees. He did not imagine a new truck or a larger house. He thought of Fiona working after midnight, correcting inventory numbers no one thanked her for. Then he called Ruth. She answered on the second ring. "You cut yourself?" "No, machine break." "No." After 47 years of marriage, Ruth knew the shape of his silences. It cleared. She asked, $927,400. Ruth let out one slow breath. "That is considerably more than a roof." She arrived 15 minutes later carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. Walter showed her the account after she shut the shop door. "What are you thinking?" She asked. "That I don't know yet." "That is not what you are thinking." Walter looked toward 3 finished chairs beneath white cloths. Fiona had drawn the curved backs. Walter had solved the joinery. Priya had photographed them and posted, a Boone House original, curated from first sketch to final finish by creative director Priya Boone. Fiona's name had not appeared. "I'm thinking money makes people easier to hear," Walter said. "You want to tell the children?" "Not yet. Desmond will be hurt. Maybe. Priya will be furious. That part one don't need time to consider." "What are we watching for?" Ruth asked, "Whether anything changes when they think there's nothing left to take." Ruth brushed sawdust from his apron. "And Fiona?" "She gets told when we know what we're doing. She deserves to know before anyone else." "I know. Knowing and saying are different jobs, Walter." By noon, Fiona arrived with supplier invoices under one arm and a laptop bag cutting into her shoulder. At 39, she tracked lumber, freight, payroll, taxes, deposits, refunds, and every leak the family preferred not to see. Desmond managed production. Priya controlled the website and customer-facing language. Walter built the difficult pieces. Ruth handled vendors. Fiona kept the business from lying to itself. She opened the accounting program and frowned. "Who approved $862 in rush freight for wood samples?" "Not me. Desmond says Priya needed them for a client presentation. They could have come regular freight for $90. "I know." Fiona attached the invoice and flagged it. "No complaint. Just a clean trail." From the showroom came Priya's polished voice. She was recording again. "Every Boone House piece begins with a story," Priya said. "I personally guide the process from concept and materials through final styling." Fiona's fingers paused above the keyboard, then she kept typing. Walter watched her through the office window. She had designed the table leg Priya was describing and spent 2 Saturdays testing it in cheap pine. Priya had rejected Fiona's request to add designer credits to the website because too many names. She said, confused customers. Walter had accepted that explanation because Desmond asked him to keep the peace, he had learned late, was often the name families gave to one person carrying all the discomfort. Priya entered the workshop with her phone still recording. She wore cream slacks and narrow heels unsuited to the shop. "There he is," she said, turning the camera toward Walter. "The hands behind the heritage." Walter disliked the phrase. "Hold the walnut sample near the window," she said, "I'm working. It'll take 5 seconds. It usually takes 40. Her smile stayed in place, but her eyes hardened. "This content brings customers in." Walter held the sample while she spoke about responsible sourcing and craft. She did not mention that Fiona had spent 6 weeks finding the mill. When Priya finished, she lowered the phone. "The apron is distracting. Next time, wear the clean one." "This is the clean one." She looked at a glue mark near the pocket. "Right." After she left, Fiona said, "She cropped me out of the spring campaign." Walter set the sample down. "I saw. I was in 12 photographs." "I know." She said customers respond better to a single creative voice. Walter looked at the tools instead of his daughter. He had watched Fiona disappear from the family story and called his silence patience. "I should have said something." Fiona gave him a tired smile. "You usually do." "Eventually." That sentence followed him through the afternoon. Dinner was at Walter and Ruth's house, as it was most Tuesdays. Ruth made shrimp and grits and cornbread. Fiona arrived first and set the table. Desmond came late, apologizing into his phone before apologizing to anyone else. Priya followed with wine and news about a hotel order. Walter placed his phone face down beside his plate. The deposit sat in the account like another guest, silent but impossible to forget. "The web order could open a new market," Priya said. 40 guestroom consoles, then lobby pieces if the first phase goes well. Fiona looked up. "Do we have the purchase order?" "Marcus is revising it." "What's the current total?" "Just under 52,000. Fiona's expression barely changed. "For 40 consoles. It's a relationship-building price. Materials and labor will be tight. That's why creative strategy matters," Priya said. "We are building market position, not simply selling furniture." Desmond nodded as though the sentence settled the math. "Fiona knows the production costs," Walter said. Priya smiled. "Of course. And I know what the client will tolerate." Ruth met Walter's eyes. Neither mentioned the money. After dessert, Walter helped with the dishes. $927,400, Ruth murmured under the running water. "I remember. And you still want to wait?" "Yes." She passed him a plate. "Then pay attention while you do." An hour later, Walter returned to the workshop because he had left the dust collector running. The building was dark except for light under the showroom door. He heard Priya before he reached the switch. Her voice was low now, stripped of its camera-ready warmth. "No, Marcus, I understand the total is 74,000, she said. "That is not the number Desmond needs for production." Walter stopped in the hallway. Priya continued, "Send the revised copy to my consulting email. The workshop paperwork should show 51.8. Keep the rest where we discussed." The dust collector hummed behind him, steady enough to cover his breathing. At dinner, Priya had called the deal under 52,000. On the phone, it was 74. Walter stood in his old apron with one hand against the workshop wall, feeling the machines vibrate through the wood. The money in his account no longer felt like a gift, it felt like time. By sunrise, Walter had decided not to confront her. A confrontation would give Priya time to explain, delete, and reorganize. Walter had spent too many years around precision work to mistake noise for proof. When a machine failed, he found the part that had slipped out of alignment, so he said nothing. He reached the workshop before 7 and wrote the numbers he had heard on a sandpaper box. $74,000, $51,800, the difference was $22,200. Fiona arrived with coffee and supplier receipts. Walter watched her unlock the office and begin matching invoices first. "Pull the web order," he said. The estimate showed 40 walnut consoles totaling $51,800. Materials, labor, and delivery left almost no profit. This cannot be final, Fiona said. Marcus requested custom hardware and 3 delivery locations. Several emails referred to missing attachments. One mentioned a deposit, but no web payment appeared in the company accounts. What did you hear? Fiona asked. Priya told Marcus the full deal was $74,000. Fiona entered both totals into a worksheet and divided the difference by $74,000. 30%, neither of them spoke. The vendor system revealed PBC brand strategy, a company Priya had created 14 months earlier. Boone House had paid it for advertising, but the incorporation record named Priya as sole owner. She is removing her share before the sale reaches Boone House, Fiona said. Can she do that? Not without disclosure and approval. Not while she uses our designs, labor, insurance, and name. Does Desmond know? I don't know. Desmond arrived 20 minutes later. Fiona turned the monitor toward him. Did you approve Priya taking 30% from the web contract? His face gave away nothing for half a second, then too much. That is probably her marketing fee. He said, 30% is not a fee you forget to list. She brought in the client. Using Dad's designs. Using the brand she built. Fiona stood. The brand is furniture. Furniture Dad builds, I cost, and you schedule. Desmond glanced toward Walter's worn apron. Priya has expenses you don't understand. Then explain them. I don't manage her consulting company. Do you receive money from it? His jaw tightened. You're accusing my wife of stealing. No, Fiona said. The numbers are doing that. Walter saw that Desmond was surprised only that Fiona had found the percentage. Did you know it was 30%? Walter asked. Desmond did not answer. He said Priya worked hard to make the shop look like something people wanted. This place was something people wanted before she learned where to point a camera, Walter replied. Desmond left. Through the office window, Fiona watched him reach for his phone. We should lock her out of the accounts. Not yet, Walter said. One contract proves one transaction. I need to know whether this is a mistake, a habit, or the whole business. Fiona stared at him, then reopened the books. Then we audit every wholesale order she touched. By 3, Fiona had identified 6 questionable deals in 14 months. One hit a shipping rebate. On a Savannah order, Priya's company received $8,700 while Boone House paid for a damaged replacement. The confirmed discrepancy was $61. 9:40, Fiona printed each document and labeled it by buyer, shop amount, outside payment, and missing authorization. Walter recognized the discipline. It was the same rule he had taught her at the lathe: never reach for the work until it stops moving. Ruth arrived with sandwiches and found the office covered in paper. Does Desmond know? She asked. Some of it, Walter said. That was not my question. No, Fiona answered. We don't know how much. Ruth read 3 pages. Odessa needs to see this. Odessa Freeman lived near Hampton Park with Leon's old shop sign above her back steps. She had known Walter since his first years as a machinist. They brought the folders after closing. Odessa listened from a wicker chair while cicadas rose in the trees. When Fiona finished, she asked, whose signature approves Priya's commissions? No one's. Who carries the cost when an order goes wrong? Boone House. Then the company carries the risk while Priya carries away the reward. She turned to Walter. How long have you known your daughter was being erased? A while. That is a coward's measurement. Odessa's voice stayed calm. Priya may be frightened of being poor again. Fear does not turn hidden money into honest money. And Desmond loving his wife does not require him to rename theft. What do we do? Fiona asked. Stop calling this a family disagreement. It is business evidence. Walter looked toward Leon's faded sign. And after that? You decide whether you want truth, revenge, or a performance. They are not the same thing. That night, Ruth's brother Curtis called. Priya had asked him to contribute $300 toward a late summer gala celebrating Boone House and Walter's retirement. She claimed she and Desmond were paying most of the cost. Walter knew of no gala. By morning, 5 more relatives had received requests. Marlene was asked for $50, a dentist for $1,000, and Ollie Petrakis for $500 to secure the venue. There was no venue. 3 relatives had already paid. Every payment link led to PBC brand strategy. Ollie brought a printed message to the workshop. Before I send money, he said, I ask the man being honored whether he wants a party. Priya wrote that she and Desmond had spent months planning the event. She described Boone House as Walter's humble beginning and Priya's modern vision. Fiona's name appeared once, buried in a guest list. How much did she ask you for? $500. Did you send it? Ollie looked offended. I may be old. I am not decorative. By Friday, Fiona had confirmed $7,850 in requests and 3 completed payments. She made a second spreadsheet with names, amounts, wording, and destination accounts. Desmond came into the office carrying one of the messages. Priya says you're digging through her private company. Her company is receiving payments tied to Boone House, Fiona said. She says those are commissions. Show me the agreements. She handles that side. Then you do not know. Walter asked, did Priya tell you she was collecting money for a gala? Desmond frowned. What gala? He read the message twice. Color rose along his neck. She probably planned to tell me. She used your name, Walter said. She is trying to do something nice for you. With Marlene's grocery money? That is not fair. Ruth stood in the doorway. It is exact. Desmond folded the page, then opened it again. His anger no longer had a clear direction. I'll talk to her. Ask where the money is, Fiona said. I said I'll handle it. You have been handling it. That is why we are here. Desmond left with the paper. This time he did not call Priya immediately. Walter watched him sit alone in his truck before driving away. That evening, Walter called Adrian Boyce at Ashcroft House. The historic mansion stood south of Broad Street behind an iron gate, with heart pine floors and a courtyard shaded by live oaks. Adrian met Walter and Ruth the next afternoon and guided them through the ballroom, garden, and a dining gallery where Charleston's evening light turned the brick copper. Walter imagined Fiona there without a registration clipboard. And Desmond entering with questions he could no longer hand away. Adrian reviewed the package, dinner for $60, a courtyard reception, basic lighting, and no branded installations without written approval. What name should appear on the reservation? She asked. Walter looked at Ruth. They had argued about this in the car. Desmond Boone, Walter said. Boone House Anniversary Gala. And the responsible payer? Walter Boone. She looked up. The reservation may carry my son's name. The deposit, final payment, and every authorization come from me. Walter read every line before signing. He paid the deposit from the royalty account, the first money he had touched since the $927. 400 arrived. Outside, Ruth waited near the courtyard fountain while Walter remained with Adrian. There is one more instruction, he said. Adrian closed the leather folder. My daughter-in-law may contact you. She may claim she represents Boone House, my son, or me. She may request changes to the menu, guest list, signs, lighting, or payment. Walter rested one hand over the repaired pocket of his apron. Approve nothing. Save every message. And regardless of whose name is printed on that reservation, no one but me authorizes a change. Adrian did not ask why. She added a red note to the reservation file and turned the screen toward Walter. All event changes require written approval from Walter Boone. If anyone calls, they come back to you, she said. Every email stays in the file. Even if the request sounds harmless. Especially then. Priya will believe the event belongs to whoever controls the signs, photographs, and guest list, Ruth said. That is why Adrian has my name on the money. And who has your name on the truth? Fiona, Walter said. If I stop getting in her way. The next morning, Fiona opened a private ledger on an offline laptop while Walter kept the workshop sounding ordinary. They started with the web contract. Boone House Records showed $51,800 for 40 Walnut consoles. Priya's company, PBC Brand Strategy, had separately billed $22,200. Together, the invoices matched the $74,000 Walter had overheard. 30% had been removed before Desmond scheduled a single hour of labor. Fiona found Marcus Webb's number in a freight confirmation. If Priya checks the business phone log, she will know. Ruth placed a prepaid phone on the desk. Use this. Marcus answered cautiously, this is Fiona Boone. I need to verify your contract total. Was the full price $74,000? A pause followed. Yes, Marcus said. Priya called the split a standard representation structure. Did she tell you PBC Brand Strategy belonged to her? No. I assumed Boone House owned it. Marcus confirmed his company had paid the first half, $37,000 total, with $25,900 sent to Boone House and $11,100 to Priya's company. The split was exactly 30%. Can you send every document as you received it? Fiona asked. I can. But what am I being pulled into? An ownership issue. I am not asking you to accuse anyone. I am asking you to preserve your records. 7 minutes later, 2 invoices, payment confirmations, and Priya's instructions arrived. One message warned Marcus not to discuss pricing with production personnel. Fiona's name appeared beneath the phrase as an example. Ruth read it once. She did not erase you by accident. At noon, Priya entered the office without knocking. Fiona minimized the ledger while Ruth covered the web documents with lumber receipts. I need the hotel cost sheet, Priya said, it is under review. Marcus approved the numbers. The numbers in our system do not cover the hardware. Then reduce labor. Whose labor? Priya's expression tightened. Sometimes margin comes later. Sometimes it goes somewhere else first. Priya looked toward the printer. What does that mean? It means production does not begin until I finish the review. Desmond says you are becoming territorial. Fiona stood. I am the bookkeeper. The books are my territory. Walter heard her from the shop floor. For once, he did not step in to soften the moment. As Priya turned to leave, she noticed an Ashcroft House brochure beneath a catalog. Ruth covered it with a lunch bag. Priya looked between them, then walked out. That afternoon, Thomas Reyes met Walter, Ruth, and Fiona above a King Street title company. Ruth had chosen him because he was a business attorney, not a family friend. Thomas read for nearly an hour, separating the paperwork into 3 stacks, confirmed, incomplete, and assumption. The web transaction is clear, he said. The buyer paid $74,000 under coordinated instructions. Boone House received 70%. A company solely owned by Priya received 30%. Is that theft? Walter asked, do not use that word yet. Authority, disclosure, tax treatment, and Desmond's knowledge all matter. Fiona pushed the other files forward. There are 6 more. There are 6 patterns. We need outside records to turn patterns into proof. He reviewed the Gala requests. Priya had solicited $7,850, and 3 relatives had paid into PBC Brand Strategy. Preserve every request and receipt, Thomas said. Do not enter accounts you cannot legally access. Do not threaten her. Do not announce conclusions before you can prove them. What can we do? Walter asked. Control your event, your money, and your records. Invite witnesses. Ask direct questions. Refuse unauthorized charges. Thomas drafted an addendum to the Ashcroft contract. The final balance could be collected only through Walter's digital authorization. No substitute card or verbal approval would be accepted. If Walter withdrew authorization, responsibility would pass to the person named on the reservation. Walter read that sentence twice. "Do not use this as theater," Thomas said. "Use it only if circumstances justify it." Walter signed. Before they left, Thomas handed Fiona stamped copies. "Documents before conclusions. You are doing this correctly." It was the first professional acknowledgement Fiona had received in months. 2 evenings later, they met Marcus on Odessa's porch. Rain drummed on the metal awning. Leon Freeman's old brass lamp stood between the wicker chairs, its yellow light falling across the invoices. Marcus arrived with a waterproof case. "I came because the furniture matters to my company," he said. "I do not want a public fight." "Neither do I," Walter replied. Marcus opened his file. The original agreement listed $74,000. Attached instructions directed 70% to Boone House and 30% to PBC Brand Strategy. Priya called the split confidential and warned that revealing it could confuse production expectations. The bank confirmation showed the first installment, $25,900 to Boone House, $11,100 to PBC Brand Strategy. Fiona placed Marcus's copies beside hers. There was no missing page now and no family interpretation. The same transaction appeared from both sides. Did Desmond approve the split? She asked. Priya said he did. "I never discussed it with him." "Would you say that in front of him?" "If he asks me directly, yes." Walter explained the Ashcroft Gala. "I would like you there as a wholesale partner. Nothing more, unless the numbers are challenged." "Does Priya know?" "No." Marcus closed the case. "Put me on the guest list. I will bring my records." Odessa had listened quietly. A person can dismiss relatives as emotional. It is harder to dismiss the other half of a transaction. The guest list reached 58, relatives, customers, the workshop crew, Leon's former apprentices, Thomas Reyes, and Marcus Webb under wholesale partners. Priya saw the draft when Desmond left it on the shop counter. "Who added Marcus?" "Dad," Fiona said. "He does not belong at a family celebration. It is a Boone House anniversary gala." Priya took out her phone. "I need to call the venue." Walter looked up. "Why?" "To handle client seating. Adrian handles seating." Priya paused. "You have spoken with her?" "I booked the room." Desmond entered through the loading bay. "You told me the reservation was in our name," Priya said. "It is under mine," Desmond answered. "Then why is your father controlling the coordinator?" Walter folded his measuring tape. "Because I am paying." The shop went still. Priya recovered first. "That is generous. I could help you avoid unnecessary costs." "The costs are handled." "Then let me manage the presentation. Adrian has her instructions." Priya glanced toward the locked office. "What instructions?" "The ones I paid for." She smiled, kissed Desmond's cheek, and left to make calls. 10 minutes later, Adrian forwarded an email. Priya had requested control of signage, a branded media wall, revised seating, upgraded lighting, and authority to approve charges for Desmond. Adrian replied that only Walter could authorize changes. Priya wrote back that Walter was elderly, unfamiliar with upscale events, and possibly confused about what he had signed. Adrian preserved that message too. That night, the documents covered Odessa's porch table beneath Leon's lamp. Thomas's marked copies, Marcus's invoices, the contribution spreadsheet, and Priya's venue emails. Walter expected Ruth to become angry. Instead, she arranged everything by date. "She wants us emotional," Ruth said. "Paper does not get emotional." Fiona created a folder labeled Event Interference. Her phone vibrated. A family-wide message from Priya filled the screen. Final Gala Fund Notice. Priya claimed vendor deadlines had created an emergency shortfall. She said she and Desmond had personally guaranteed the celebration and accused relatives who had not contributed of leaving the burden on the few people willing to protect Walter's legacy. The new minimum was $750. For business owners, it was $2,500. Payment was due within 48 hours to PBC Brand Strategy. Contributions, she added, would affect priority seating and access to the private reception. At the bottom was a personal note to Odessa. because Leon gave Walter his start. I know you understand why honoring this legacy properly is worth the sacrifice. Odessa read the line twice, removed her glasses, and placed them beside Marcus Webb's bank confirmation. Priya had invoked a dead man's name to collect money for a gala Walter had already funded, and this time, Walter was holding the real numbers when she asked. Walter did not answer Priya's message, neither did Ruth, Fiona, Odessa, or Marcus. The 48-hour deadline passed without another dollar entering PBC brand strategy. Priya sent 2 reminders, then returned to the workshop acting as though nothing unusual had happened. Walter kept building. The gala arrived on the last Saturday of August. Ashcroft House stood behind its iron gate in the thick Charleston heat, its old brick darkened by a brief rain. Staff crossed the courtyard carrying linen and glassware while a technician tested amber uplights beneath the live oaks. Walter arrived in pressed black trousers, a white shirt and his brown canvas apron. Ruth saw it when he stepped from the truck. You decided. I did. The invitation says black tie. The invitation also says Boone House. The apron had been brushed clean, but Walter had not hidden its history. The repaired strap remained visible. So did the pale glue marks near the pocket. Inside rested Leon Freeman's brass caliper. Adrian met them in the ballroom. Your final authorization is scheduled for 8:45. If it is withdrawn, the venue returns to the standard house package and the outstanding balance passes to the reservation holder. Desmond, Walter said, yes. She lowered her voice. Priya contacted us 11 times. We declined every requested change and preserved every message. Ruth glanced at Walter. Then the room is ready. Fiona arrived with one slim document case. Thomas Reyes came 10 minutes later. Marcus Webb handed his waterproof case to Adrian for safekeeping. No one opened a file that belonged to later, if later became necessary. Odessa entered wearing Leon's old silver tie pin. When she saw Walter's apron, she touched the repaired strap. Leon fixed this. Copper rivets. He said stitching would fail again. He was right. He often was. It made him exhausting. Walter smiled for the first time that day. By 6:58 guests filled the ballroom, relatives, clients, workshop employees, former apprentices, and hotel buyers. Boone House consoles stood beneath floral arrangements near the windows. Priya arrived in a silver gown with Desmond beside her. She paused inside the doorway until people noticed. This is exactly what I wanted, she said. Adrian looked at Walter. Walter did nothing. Priya moved through the room accepting compliments for her vision. She told a hotel representative she had transformed Boone House from a local workshop into a serious brand. She told a lifestyle editor the Gala completed a 3-year rebrand. Fiona heard both statements. Her anger had become so controlled it looked almost like calm. Desmond found Walter near the courtyard doors. You wore the apron. I did. This is not the shop, Dad. Walter looked toward the furniture displaying the flowers. The shop is the reason this room exists. Can we get through one night without making a statement? I haven't made one. That apron is a statement. It is clothing. Desmond walked away before Walter could say more. At 6:30, Priya saw Marcus speaking with Thomas. Why is he here? She asked Fiona. He was invited. By whom? Walter. This is a celebration, not an audit. Then celebrate. Priya stepped closer. You have been poisoning your father against me. Fiona kept her voice low. Dad heard your numbers before I showed him mine. For a moment, Priya lost her polish. What numbers? Adrian announced dinner before Fiona answered. Walter and Ruth sat at the center of the main table. Desmond and Priya faced them. Fiona sat beside Odessa, while Marcus and Thomas joined the wholesale guests nearby. Priya gave the welcome speech before the first course was cleared. She thanked Desmond for trusting her to guide Boone House into its next era. She thanked the clients who believed in her direction and the relatives whose generosity had helped make the evening possible. Walter felt Ruth's hand close around his beneath the table. Priya did not thank Walter. Fiona, the workshop employees, or the relatives whose contributions had entered her private company. She did mention Leon. This began with one mentor believing in one young craftsman, she said. Tonight, I am honored to carry that legacy forward. Odessa's expression did not move. The guests applauded because applause was what a room did when a person stopped speaking at a microphone. Fiona stared at her water glass. Walter leaned toward her. Not yet. I know. The main course arrived at 8:15. Amber light softened the old brick while lightning flashed beyond the windows. Walter ate slowly. He could feel Leon's caliper against his apron pocket whenever he leaned forward. At 8:30, Adrian placed a leather folio on a service table. Inside was the final authorization screen. Priya noticed. Is that the event balance? She asked. Yes. I can review it. Walter Boone is the authorizing payer. Priya smiled as though correcting a child. Desmond and I are hosting. The reservation holder and payer are different roles. Bring it to me after dessert. I manage these details for him. No, Adrian continued toward the service doors. Priya returned to the table with color high in her cheeks. You arranged that to embarrass me, she told Walter. I did not speak. You do not understand how professional events work. Ruth put down her fork. He understood the contract. A photographer approached and asked for a Boone family portrait beside one of the walnut consoles. Priya stood immediately. Yes. Let's do the founder image. Walter rose with Ruth. Fiona joined them. Desmond moved beside Priya. They gathered beneath the chandelier. Walter's apron sat plainly against his white shirt. The photographer lifted the camera. Priya's smile vanished. Walter, take that off. The photographer lowered the lens slightly. Walter looked at her. Take what off? The apron. No, she forced a laugh. We are taking a formal portrait. This is what I wear when I make the furniture. This is a black tie gala, not a workbench. Nearby conversations thinned. Walter remained beside the console. Priya stepped closer. It has glue stains. Yes. It looks filthy. It is clean. It looks like something a laborer forgot to remove before coming through the front door. The photographer lowered the camera. Fiona's face became still. Priya saw the gathering attention and raised her voice. This evening represents the future of Boone House. Clients came here expecting refinement. They should not have to watch the founder wander around dressed like hired help. Silence spread across the ballroom. Priya pointed toward the coatroom. Take off the apron, wash your hands, and come back when you look like you belong in the business we built. We built. Walter looked at Desmond. His son's face was tight with embarrassment, but not at Priya. Dad, Desmond said, just take it off. She's right. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Fiona stepped beside Walter. He belongs here more than anyone in this room. Fiona, Desmond warned, you do not get to call his hands embarrassing while selling what those hands make. Priya folded her arms. This is about presentation. It is always about presentation with you. That is how you take the work without seeing the worker. Several workshop employees lowered their eyes. Walter touched Fiona's elbow. She stopped, but her restrained fury remained visible. He turned to Desmond. When you were 15, you wore this apron while I taught you to cut your first mortise. Desmond looked away. You ruined 2 boards. I remember. I told you ruined wood was tuition. Dad, not here. This is the only place you seem willing to answer. Priya gave a sharp breath. We are not turning my gala into a family therapy session. Ruth's voice came quietly from Walter's side. Your gala. Walter reached into his apron pocket. Priya watched his hand as though she expected the brass caliper. Instead, he removed his phone. The authorization page was open. Final event balance, $31,680. Walter looked once at Ruth. She nodded. He selected decline and withdraw authorization. A warning appeared. Responsibility would transfer to the named reservation holder under the signed agreement. Walter entered his code. Across the room, Adrienne's tablet vibrated. He returned the phone to his apron pocket. no announcement followed. Priya still stood beneath the chandelier with one hand raised toward the courtroom, then the amber uplights along the brick walls went dark, the garden projection disappeared. For several seconds the chandeliers dimmed while the controls reset to standard house lighting. The ballroom did not become dark, it became ordinary, the warm theatrical glow vanished, leaving every face exposed in plain white light. Guests looked toward the ceiling. Priya turned to Adrian. What happened? The upgraded event package is no longer authorized. What does that mean? Adrian crossed the ballroom carrying the leather folio. The remaining balance was declined by the authorized payer. Priya looked at Walter. He stood beside the walnut console in the apron she had ordered him to remove. That must be an error, she said. It was not, Walter replied. Desmond stepped forward. Dad, what did you do? I stopped paying for a room where my work is welcome and I am not. A murmur moved through the guests. Priya's gaze darted toward Marcus, Thomas, Fiona, then back to Adrian. She was calculating again. Use the card attached to the reservation. There is no authorized card attached, Adrian said. A new payment method is required from the named reservation holder. That is Desmond. Yes. Desmond stared at the folio. How much? $31,680. The number settled over the room. Priya laughed once. Fine. Use our business card. Fiona's eyes lifted. Desmond hesitated. Priya took the card from his wallet and handed it to Adrian. Process it. The ballroom waited under plain white light. Staff paused near the service doors. Guests whispered behind raised glasses. Outside, thunder reached the mansion. Priya stood straight, refusing to look at Walter. A terminal sounded from across the room. Adrian checked the screen, then returned with the card resting on the folio. The transaction was declined. This time, Priya did not speak. Her confidence cracked in small visible places, the tightening around her mouth. The quick glance toward the exits, and the sudden awareness of Marcus Webb's case behind Adrian's desk. For the first time that evening, Priya looked at the room and understood that something was happening which she had not arranged. The declined card lay on the leather folio between Priya and Adrian. For several seconds, nobody moved. Without the amber lighting, the ballroom was simply an old room full of people waiting for an explanation. Priya recovered first. Run it again. The terminal attempted the charge twice, Adrian said, then use another processor. The issuer declined it. Priya turned to Desmond. Call the bank. Desmond was staring at the balance. $31,680, then he looked at Walter. Dad, put your authorization back. Walter stood beside the walnut console with Ruth at his right and Fiona at his left. The repaired strap of his apron pressed against his shoulder. No, you cannot leave this on me. The reservation is in your name. You put it there. I did. Why? Walter looked at Priya. Because I wanted to know what you would protect when you believed the room belonged to you. Priya laughed once. This is punishment because I asked you to dress appropriately. You called him hired help, Fiona said. I was protecting the company's image. The company's image is standing in front of you. Priya glanced toward the guests. This is a private family matter. No, Fiona said. You made it a business matter when you collected business money through a company you never disclosed. Desmond warned her name, but Fiona did not retreat. For years, she had softened facts for her brother and absorbed Priya's insults. She was finished translating. Before anyone pays another dollar, Fiona said, they should know where the other money went. Priya faced Walter. You planned an ambush. You planned a gala with money that was not yours. Thomas Reyes rose from his table. Fiona, stay with the documents. Adrian retrieved Marcus Webb's waterproof case. Marcus opened it on an empty table and arranged the original agreement. Payment instructions, and bank confirmation beneath the white chandelier light. My company agreed to pay $74,000 for 40 consoles, he said. The instructions divided every payment. 70% went to Boone House. 30% went to PBC Brand Strategy. Priya folded her arms. A standard representation commission. Marcus continued, the first installment was $37,000. $25,900 went to Boone House. $11,100 went to PBC. The second installment carried the same split. He turned the agreement toward Desmond. Under the full contract, Boone House receives $51,800. PBC receives $22,200. Desmond stared at Priya. You told me the contract was $51,800. That is the production number. You told me it was the entire sale. Marcus placed an email beside the invoice. Priya instructed me not to discuss the total with production personnel because it could confuse expectations. Fiona was named specifically. Priya looked around the room. This is missing context, she said. I brought in the client. I developed the positioning. Boone House would never have reached Marcus without me. That may justify compensation, Thomas said. It does not justify hidden compensation. He held up his summary. PBC brand strategy is owned solely by Priya. No written 30% commission agreement was approved. The relationship was not disclosed in Boone House's books, while Boone House carried the labor, materials, warranty, replacement, and delivery risk. He turned to Desmond. I found no signed approval from you. There isn't one, Desmond said, Priya's voice sharpened. You knew I had a fee. I knew you billed for marketing. I did not know it was 30%. Thomas continued before they could turn it into an argument. Across 6 documented transactions, the records identify $61,940 in undisclosed related party compensation and diverted rebates. Some amounts were paid. Others were contractually scheduled. None appeared in Boone House's internal sales totals. Fiona placed her spreadsheet beside Marcus's invoices. While Priya said there was no margin for overtime, her company was paid before payroll was calculated. Boone House covered damaged replacements. PBC kept the outside payment. Calvin Brooks, one of the senior craftsmen, spoke from near the wall. We lost 2 Saturdays fixing Savannah. Boone House absorbed the loss, Fiona said. PBC kept $8,700. Priya's composure began to fracture. You all benefited. Sales increased after I took over the brand. Clients stopped treating the shop like a backyard hobby. Walter heard the belief beneath the defense. Priya believed she had rescued them and could decide what the rescue cost. You did help the business grow, he said. She looked surprised. You made people notice the work. But attention did not turn my designs into yours. A photograph did not make Fiona's numbers disposable. And bringing a buyer to the door did not give you the right to hide what he paid. I was building value. You were assigning value to yourself in secret. Priya pointed at his apron. This is why I had to take control. People buy aspiration. They buy a story that does not smell like sawdust and machine oil. Odessa Freeman rose slowly. My husband came home smelling like machine oil for 43 years. She said. That smell paid our mortgage and trained apprentices when there was no audience to applaud him. Priya looked away. I know you grew up afraid of not having enough, Odessa continued. Fear can make a person ambitious. It can also make them believe every dollar they do not control is a threat. You do not know me. No. But I know what you did with Leon's name. Odessa lifted Priya's final fundraising message. You told me honoring his legacy was worth sacrifice. You asked me for money after Walter had already paid for the room. You used a dead man's kindness as pressure. The room stayed silent. That is not branding, Odessa said. That is turning trust into cash. Fiona opened a second folder. The Gala requests totaled $7,850 before the final notice. 3 payments were completed. Curtis sent $300. Marlene sent $50. Dr. Elaine Cooper sent $1,000. Marlene lowered her eyes. You did nothing wrong, Fiona told her. Then she faced Priya. $1,350 entered PBC brand strategy. None of it paid Ashcroft House. Walter paid the deposit and funded the event. Adrian confirmed it. No contribution payment was credited to this venue. There were other expenses, Priya said. Name them, Fiona replied. My time. Invitations. Media preparation. You told relatives there was an emergency vendor shortfall. Ruth's voice was quiet. You charged people for a crisis that did not exist. Priya turned to Desmond. Say something. He stood beneath the plain chandelier light holding Marcus's invoice. Walter understood that his son's choice was not simply between his wife and family. It was whether love required him to repeat a lie after seeing the paper. Did you send those messages without telling me? Desmond asked. I was handling the event. Did you tell Marcus I approved the split? You told me to do what was necessary to grow the business. That is not approval. You never wanted the details. The sentence landed harder than denial. Desmond closed his eyes briefly. No. I didn't. Because you trusted me. Because I liked not having to ask where the money came from. His admission did not excuse him. It made him visible. He looked at Fiona. I knew Priya billed something separately. I did not know it was 30%. I did not know about the contributions. But when you asked questions, I defended her before I looked. That was still a choice, Fiona said. I know. Priya stared at him. You are apologizing to her in front of everyone. I am telling the truth in front of everyone. Then tell them I built this brand. You helped build it. You did not build Dad's designs, Fiona's books, or the furniture. So now you stand with them. I am not saying Dad was right to put my name on the contract without telling me, Desmond said. Walter accepted that without protest, but I will not call these invoices fake. I will not ask him to restore the payment. And you will not collect another dollar in my name. Priya stepped away. What do you expect me to do? Refund Curtis, Marlene, and Elaine. Give Thomas the PBC records. Then we deal with the venue and the business. You cannot order me to open my company. No. But I can stop covering for it. She picked up her purse. If I walk out, you are coming with me. Desmond did not move, not until this is settled. Priya looked at Walter. You wanted to break my marriage. I wanted the books to match the story. You wanted revenge. Part of me did. Walter looked at Fiona. I also wanted to avoid admitting how long I let this happen. Priya took credit because I stayed quiet. Desmond looked away because I kept rescuing him. Fiona carried the truth because I decided she was strong enough to carry what the rest of us dropped. Fiona's eyes shone. That was my failure, Walter said. Tonight does not erase it. Ruth stepped against his shoulder. No, she said. But tonight ends it. Thomas gathered the documents. No court has ruled and no one is being arrested. These records will be preserved and addressed through proper business channels. The contribution money should remain untouched until refunds are documented. No contracts, emails, or account records should be altered. Priya stopped near the doorway. You think a folder makes you powerful? No, Thomas said. It makes the facts harder to move. Marcus closed his case. Adrian placed the unpaid folio before Desmond. He signed an acknowledgement that the balance remained due under the reservation agreement. It simply attached his name to the obligation Walter had warned him about. Around the room, people began making quiet choices. Calvin and two workshop employees moved toward Fiona. Curtis asked how to document his payment. Dr. Cooper forwarded her receipt to Thomas. A hotel buyer asked Marcus for a private conversation the next morning. Nobody shouted. Chairs turned away, phones lowered, and business cards returned to pockets. Priya stood alone near the coatroom. Desmond remained with the invoices. Walter removed Leon's brass caliper from his apron and placed it in Fiona's hand. Why are you giving me this? She asked. Because you measured what the rest of us refused to. Her fingers closed around the old tool. Walter offered Ruth his arm. the rain had stopped by the time they crossed the courtyard. Water shone between the bricks, and the live oaks dripped into the dark. Behind them, Ashcroft House remained bright with plain white light. Through the tall windows, Desmond sat on one side of the ballroom and Priya stood on the other, the distance between them visible to everyone still inside. Ruth held Walter's arm as they passed through the iron gate. He was still wearing the apron. Neither of them looked back. The silence followed Walter and Ruth home. Ruth turned on the kitchen light. Walter removed the apron, folded it over a chair, and stared at the repaired strap. "You did not enjoy that," she said. "No, good. Enjoying it would have made me worry." Walter sat down. Across Charleston, Desmond was responsible for a $31,680 bill. Priya was still standing beside invoices she could no longer rename. Fiona was probably helping Thomas preserve the records. For the first time since the royalty payment arrived, Walter did not feel powerful, he felt tired. Ruth covered his hands with hers. "Do not confuse consequences with cruelty. I put Desmond's name on that contract without telling him." "You did. You should answer for that. But you did not tell him to ignore the books, and you did not tell Priya to collect money in his name." Desmond called the next morning. "I paid Ashcroft," he said. "How?" "A personal credit line." "I am sorry. You could fix it." "I could." "Will you?" "No, Thomas says the accounts are restricted. Until the review is complete." Fiona authorized that. Fiona had the authority to protect the business. She never had it before. That was part of the problem. Desmond said Priya now knew about the $927,400 royalty payment. Walter looked toward the folded apron. The secret had lasted as long as it needed to. What happens now? Desmond asked. "We meet Monday. Priya provides the PBC records. The relatives are refunded. Then we decide whether Boone House still has a future with all of us in it." Monday's meeting took place in the workshop office. Thomas Reyes sat at the end with 3 agreements. Fiona had organized the evidence into binders. Priya arrived late with her own attorney and no apology. The final reconciliation preserved the $61,940 discrepancy. Some amounts had already been paid to PBC Brand Strategy. Others were scheduled but not yet collected. Pending amounts were cancelled, disputed funds went into Thomas's trust account, and the Gala contributions were refunded. Curtis received $300, Marlene received $50, Dr. Elaine Cooper received $1,000. Priya did not admit theft. Walter did not demand language Thomas could not support. The documents described undisclosed transactions, unauthorized solicitation, and unapproved compensation. Facts were enough. Boone House changed on paper before it changed anywhere else. Every wholesale contract required 2 signatures. Payments to family-owned companies required disclosure and independent review. Rebates belonged to Boone House unless a contract stated otherwise. No one person could control the invoice, bank account, and public story. Fiona became managing partner and chief financial officer. Her authority covered contracts, banking, payroll, vendor credits, and reporting. Her name appeared beside every piece she designed. The curved back chairs were relisted, designed by Fiona Boone. Joinery developed by Walter Boone. Desmond remained director of production, but his schedules and budgets were subject to review. Priya lost access to Boone House accounts. Any future marketing work required a written contract, fixed compensation, and approval from Fiona and Walter. Priya signed because the alternative was a longer dispute. Desmond signed because refusing to read the details would no longer make them disappear. Afterward, Walter placed a brass nameplate on Fiona's desk. Fiona Boone, managing partner CFO. She ran her thumb across the letters. "I did not need a title to know I was right." "No, but it would have helped if the rest of you had acted like my work was real." Walter nodded. "I cannot repair every year with one plate." "No, I can stop asking you to wait for permission you already earned." Fiona looked through the office window at Desmond alone near the loading bay. "Do you think he will change?" "I think he wants the pain to stop." "That is not the same thing." No. It is only where he is starting. Desmond and Priya began counseling the next week. They attended one session together. Missed the second, and arrived separately for the third. Priya insisted ambition had been confused with dishonesty. Desmond said the counselor kept asking why he called avoidance loyalty. They announced neither separation nor forgiveness. Some nights Desmond slept at home. Other nights he stayed above the workshop office. Priya delivered the PBC records through her attorney and returned the contribution money, but she still argued that her commission reflected real value. Desmond stopped arguing that intent settled the matter. That was not redemption. It was the first honest difference Walter had seen in him. 6 weeks after the gala, Walter invited Odessa to the workshop before opening. Ruth and Fiona were already there. On the main bench lay a proposed charter and a photograph of Leon Freeman beside the first industrial lathe he had taught Walter to use. Walter had decided what to do with part of the royalty payment. The Leon Freeman Trade Apprenticeship Fund would pay for tools, safety gear, community college classes, and a year of supervised work for young adults who could not enter a skilled trade unpaid. Apprentices would rotate through Boone House and partner shops, learning drafting, bookkeeping, safety, estimating, and joinery. No unpaid trial labor, Fiona said. No promises of exposure instead of wages. Odessa read the charter. How much? 300,000 to start. Walter said. She looked at Ruth. We agreed, Ruth said, and after Walter is gone. The fund has its own board, Fiona replied. You have a seat. Odessa touched Leon's photograph. He would have called this too much fuss. He would have complained about the food, Walter said, and eaten twice. She signed. The ribbon cutting took place in the workshop on a clear November morning. There were no chandeliers. Folding chairs filled the space between workbenches. 4 apprentices stood behind the ribbon with tool bags bearing their names. Odessa held the scissors. Fiona thanked the shops and instructors who had agreed to train people without treating them as free labor. Skilled hands, she said, were often ignored until somebody needed what they knew how to make. Then she thanked Leon, not as a symbol, but as a machinist who corrected mistakes, paid beginners for their time, and believed instruction was part of the work. Odessa cut the ribbon. Walter watched the apprentices. 19-year-old Jordan Price held a new combination square as though it were too expensive to touch. A tool does not become useful by staying clean, Walter told him. I do not want to ruin it. You will. Then you will learn how not to. Desmond stood near the back wall. He had come alone. After the chairs were folded, he approached Fiona with a production report and waited until she finished with a vendor. I added the labor assumptions and warranty reserve, he said. Fiona reviewed it. You left out freight on the Hilton Head order. Desmond checked the page. I will fix it. He did not blame the software or mention Priya. He took the report back. Walter saw Fiona notice. Neither called it progress. Thanksgiving came 3 weeks later. Ruth invited everyone. Priya declined. Desmond arrived alone with a store-bought pie and no explanation. The meal was polite, uneven, and real. He apologized to Marlene before dinner. Later, he stood with Walter on the back porch and said counseling had not given him an answer about his marriage. It is not supposed to give you an answer, Walter said. What if we stay married and nothing changes? Then nothing changed. What if she cannot forgive me for turning against her? You did not turn against her by refusing a lie. Desmond looked through the kitchen window at Fiona and Ruth packing leftovers. I spent years thinking peace meant keeping Priya calm. I spent years thinking it meant keeping everyone calm. How did that work out? You were at the gala. Desmond almost smiled. The next morning, Walter opened the workshop before sunrise. Jordan arrived early. Fiona's nameplate caught the light through the office window. Leon's photograph hung beside the apprenticeship charter. On the website, the walnut table was finally credited to the people who had designed and built it. Walter tied on the same brown apron, the copper rivets held. He showed Jordan how to sand walnut without rounding the edge. Do not fight the grain, Walter said. Feel where it is already trying to go. Jordan adjusted his hand. Sawdust rose through the morning light and settled on both their sleeves. Walter's phone buzzed against the old drafting cabinet. It was a message from Fiona asking him to approve the first apprentice payroll. Through the office window, she sat at her desk with Leon's brass caliper beside her keyboard, waiting for his signature but no longer waiting for his permission to matter. Walter approved the payroll and returned to the table. Money could expose a lie and pay for a second chance. It could not teach a hand what honest work felt like. That had to be passed from one person to another. Walter placed Jordan's fingers against the walnut and let him feel when it was finally square.